Hey friends, welcome back and thanks for joining me today. This is Nancy Sheads and I have a new project for you featuring the Christmas Cutouts Thinlit dies from Sizzix and Tim Holtz. This 16-piece die set features the words peace, love, hope, and joy. It has two houses, some pine trees, the moon, a cloud, and stars, and I'll use a selection of the dies to create a nighttime scene. So here's a look at the card that I created earlier, and I'm going to start by showing you the products that I used. Of course, the star of this card is the Christmas Cutouts Thinlit dies by Sizzix and Tim Holtz. I have a A2 top folding card base cut from Neenah cardstock, and a piece of Hammermill Smooth cardstock that I'll use for ink blending. For the background, I'm using the Cloud Stencil by My Favorite Things. I have a pack of double-sided adhesive sheets from Elizabeth Craft Designs. This particular product may be discontinued, but I'll link to similar products in the description below. I'll trim the image panel with one of the dies from the Hero Arts Infinity Rectangles set, and I'll be using Distress Oxide ink in Picked Raspberry, Wilted Violet, Peacock Feathers, Mermaid Lagoon, and Black Soot. I have my color-coordinated blending brushes from Tailored Expressions that I use only for Oxide inks. And finally, I'll be using mint low-tack tape from scrapbook.com to hold the dies in place. Off camera, I trimmed a piece of Hammermill cardstock using the third largest die in the Infinity Rectangle die set. I selected the dies that I wanted to use to create my nighttime scene, and I arranged them on the cardstock. I used mint tape to hold the dies in place for die cutting. After running them through my die cut machine, I carefully removed the tape and extracted all of the die cut pieces. I decided to die cut the panel before ink blending for a couple of reasons. First, I knew that I wanted all the die cuts to be white, so it was easier to cut them out of the same panel rather than waste another piece of cardstock. And second, my cutting pads are well worn from use, and Oxide ink takes a while to dry thoroughly. If I cut the panel while the ink is still wet, the scarring on the cutting pads will leave an imprint on the paper, so it just made sense to die cut before ink blending. I applied Distress Oxide starting with Picked Raspberry and continued with Wilted Violet, Peacock Feathers, and Mermaid Lagoon. Now the paper will weaken a bit as it gets saturated from the ink, so you need to be careful while ink blending so that you don't tear or crease the paper. I just keep going back and forth between the colors so that I can get the look that I want. The blend doesn't have to be perfect, since we'll be adding another layer, but I want the transitions to be pretty smooth. Once I get the look that I want, I use the Cloud Stencil and Black Soot Oxide ink to complete the sky, and I just kept rotating the stencil and applying the ink to create the design. I want to give a shout out to Kathy at Stamping Still. She used this combination for a card featuring an image by Moe's Digital Pencil, and her background was the inspiration for my nighttime scene. I'll link to her card in the description below. Once the background was complete, I applied the double-sided adhesive to the back of the panel. I flipped it over and began insetting the die-cut pieces back into the panel. For the sentiment, I stuck all the letters on a piece of low-tack tape and ink blended them with Peacock Feathers Oxide ink. I used Mermaid Lagoon for the original card, so you'll see a slight difference in the color. I inset the letters in place to complete the front of the card. I flipped the panel over and pulled off the backing sheet for the adhesive. I adhered the panel to the front of the card base to finish off the card. Here you can see the card that I originally created using Mermaid Lagoon for the letters. I love how they both turned out. If you're interested in the products that I used, they're linked below in the description, or you can stop by my blog to see this and other holiday cards that I've recently made. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you again soon.